Hey everybody, my name is Bishop, and the book I decided to read is called False Alarm, written by Lomborg. So about Lomborg, he is a Danish author and the president of the think tank Copenhagen Consensus Center. He is the former director of the Danish government's Environmental Assessment Institute. He graduated from the School of Business and Social Sciences from the University of Georgia and also attended Copenhagen University, which is located in Denmark. Throughout his career, he has made one movie and written 9 books, all related to Earth crisis and solutions. The focus in this book is how climate change costs the U.S. economy trillions of dollars and has negative effects on the poor, and fails to fix the planet. Global warming is definitely a problem, but it's not as scary as it sounds. It is a manageable problem, yet half the population believes climate change will wipe out humanity. The current false climate alarm, despite its current intentions, is likely to leave the world much worse off than it could be. Lomborg even states in the book, "That's why I'm writing this book now. We need to dial back on the panic, look at the science, face the economics, and address the issue rationally." Again, climate change is real and caused predominantly by carbon emissions from humans burning fossil fuels, but there's not much of a better source of energy right now. As expected, though, any response to climate change will cost money. If a low-cost policy could fix most of the problem, that would be money well spent. However, it turns out that the Paris Agreement, which is an agreement within the United Nations framework that aims to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions and limit global temperature increase, will achieve just 1% of what the politicians have promised, and at a huge cost. A 2019 Washington Post survey showed that while more than 3/4 of all Americans think climate change is a crisis, a majority was unwilling to spend $24 a year on fixing the problem. Yet the commonly proposed policies will cost many of thousands of dollars per person to solve climate change. One main reason why people are afraid of climate change is that if you watch the news or read the paper, the weather increasingly is portrayed as frightening. Sure, climate change is costing us more money as years go on, and hurricanes, floodings, and terrifying droughts have been terrorizing the world. Well, that's wrong. The reality is that these weather events in both numbers and severity have stayed the same. For example, a hurricane or flood hitting a small populated Florida in the 1900s would have done minor damage. Since then, the coastal population has increased 67-fold. A similar strength hurricane or flood hitting a densely populated Florida in 2020 leads to much higher costs. This cost is not because hurricanes have changed, but society has. This well-known phenomenon is known as the expanding bullseye effect. This means that similar climate impacts will be much more costly disasters because an increasing number of people with more valuable assets are at risk. Overall, the expanding bullseye effect means that we are likely to see much more costly climate disasters happen over time, even if the climate does not change at all. There's a meta-narrative about climate change, and that narrative is this: global warming makes everything worse, and since global warming is present in almost everything, it affects everything, essentially making it worse. But like most other things, global warming has downsides and upsides. For example, more rain can lead to flooding in some places, but more rain can also alleviate an existing drought. Overall, when we look at the scientific evidence, while an increase in rain does often alleviate droughts, it does not lead to more flooding because we use much of the additional water in agriculture and industry. One thing about climate change, though, that it's extremely exaggerated through the media. In quotation on the news heading, "a raging, howling signal of climate change." That's what the Washington Post declared about extreme weather. Whether it's flooding, forest fires, or destructive hurricanes, extreme weather events are naturally cast by the media as evidence that climate change is not only real, but also urgent and disastrous when that is not the case at all. I'm sure that a couple people watching this video can also relate to this, that they have seen or heard an extremely exaggerated news headline about climate change and how we need to fix the problem ASAP. If we need to fix the problem of climate change, we need to be very cautious about how we do it. People are changing their lifestyles to reduce their carbon emissions. Individuals and companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars annually on carbon offsets and other measures. Taxpayers, through regulations and subsidies, are collectively spending hundreds of billions of dollars annually to encourage the use of today's alternative energy technologies, such as electric cars and solar panels. Soon enough, we'll start spending trillions of dollars every year to convert modern economy to greenhouse energy sources such as solar energy, wind energy, and hydro energy. Yet all of these efforts continue to fail. If climate policies worked, then the amount of carbon dioxide we emit for every unit of energy produced, called carbon intensity, should be declining, but it's not. Not only does each unit of energy release ever more carbon dioxide, but the world is using more and more energy, and as a result, total carbon dioxide keeps rising. Since 1992, humanity has emitted more carbon dioxide than in all of history before then. Emissions will keep increasing in the coming decades as poor countries climb out of poverty. The last decade has seen more focus on climate change than ever before, yet despite that, we are not achieving anything. In an honest review of climate policies, the United Nations revealed that the last decade of climate policies has achieved a total of nothing. Essentially, we are wasting millions of dollars on nothing. As the Blue Plate host David Attenborough puts it, every single one of the planet's 7 billion inhabitants must play their part against global warming and take simple daily actions. When David Attenborough was asked what personal action he would take to prevent global warming, he promised to unplug his mobile phone charger when not in use. But if he remembers to do this consistently throughout the entire year, he will just cut 7 pounds of carbon dioxide. 7 pounds of carbon dioxide per year is hard to comprehend. One simple way that we can get a sense of the scale of the effects of different cuts is by using the carbon trading system. The RGGI, or RGGI, is a carbon trading marketplace covering the northeastern United States. It is just one of many around the world. The RGGI puts a cap on the amount of carbon dioxide that large fossil fuel-run power plants can emit in the region. Then it allows emit authorizations to be bought and sold. It costs about $6 to buy an authorization for 1 ton of carbon dioxide. If you buy an authorization, it means there's 1 less ton that power plants can purchase. If you don't use that authorization, that means all the power plants need to find a way to emit 1 less ton over the next year. Essentially, you spent $6 to reduce global emissions by 1 ton. Going back to David Attenborough, promising that he'll unplug his phone charger when not in use, by him doing that and cutting 7 pounds of carbon dioxide, that would be less than 2 cents to the climate cause. Carbon taxes, innovation, and adaptation can reduce carbon dioxide emissions, bringing forward the day that we transition away from the dependence on fossil fuels and reduce our vulnerability to climate change. However, our track record in delivering effective climate policies is not stellar. But there is an approach that can dramatically reduce temperature at a very low cost and in as little as weeks. It is called geoengineering and essentially means deliberately adjusting the planet's temperature controls. It is not a policy we should be implementing right now, but geoengineering is a partial solution to climate change that is worth researching. We should think of geoengineering as a backup plan that we could turn to if we don't manage to get everyone to do everything needed on carbon taxes, innovation, and adaptation. And because it works so quickly, it could play a role if we ever needed fast action to avoid a looming catastrophe. Obviously, there is a lot we do not yet know about this technology and how it would work on a planetary scale. But there are 3 key reasons why we should start researching geoengineering technologies. The first argument is that the only known approach that allows us to make dramatic cuts in global temperature at low cost. Research for Copenhagen Consensus shows that just $9 billion spent building 1,900 seawater spraying boats could prevent all temperature increase projected in the century. The second argument follows straight from the first. If changing the planet's temperature turns out to be relatively cheap and easy, there's a risk that a single nation or even a highly energized non-governmental organization could deploy the technology on their own. Therefore, it is important that scientists carefully investigate its potential impacts now and share this information to make sure we all know more about geoengineering's potential negative impacts. The third and final key argument for exploring this technology is that it would allow us to change the global average temperature very quickly. Any standard fossil fuel cutting policy will take decades to implement and half a century to have any noticeable climate impact. Instead, geoengineering can literally reduce temperatures in a matter of weeks. To conclude this book review, the goal of climate policy is to make a better place. We can charge on in the same direction, but 30 years of failed climate policy tells us this approach will not make the world work much better, and it will cost us a lot. Panic doesn't just lead us toward bad or inefficient policy solutions, but it also leads us to focus on the wrong problems, and this is the problem we've seen throughout the history on the environmental movement. Much of the early concern of environmental organizations, campaigners, and politicians was with regulation to protect us with potential dangerous toxins. Even the United Nations claimed that DDT and other toxins were causing more than half of all cancers, although the correct number was lower than 2%. The resulting nationwide fear led to large federal focus on reducing toxin risks. The total cost of regulating toxins ran to more than $200 billion per year by the mid-1990s. But these politicians had a very poor return on investment. A research team from Harvard evaluated the regulations and found that most of them were very inefficient. Emission controls at rubber tire manufacturing plants, for instance, cost $100 million per year, but would only save a life only once every 4,000 years. Finally, overspending on bad climate policies doesn't just waste money. It means understanding on effective climate policies and underspending on the opportunities we must improve for life for billions of people now and into the future. Over the past century, the world has become a better place thanks to human ingenuity and innovation. Our choice now is whether we want to allow fear to drive our choices or if we want to use our ingenuity and innovation to make sure that we leave future generations the best world possible. So that is my book review on false alarm. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and thank you for listening.